The movie opens with Amelia, still haunted by the tragic death of her husband, who died in a car accident while driving her to the hospital to give birth to their son, Samuel. Her grief is ever present, and the memory of that night looms over her life. Amelia's days are consumed by the pressures of single motherhood, working at a nursing home by day and caring for Samuel at night. Despite her love for Samuel, the demands of her job and his increasingly difficult behavior leave her emotionally and physically drained. At home, Amelia struggles to maintain control. Samuel, who is obsessed with monsters, constantly seeks her attention, further stressing their fragile relationship. He disrupts her sleep, and his erratic behavior at school has become a source of constant frustration. Though Amelia tries to hold herself together, her unresolved grief and exhaustion are taking a toll, setting the stage for the psychological horror that will soon enter their lives. Samuel's behavior grows more erratic as his fear of monsters intensifies. He insists that creatures are lurking in the house and builds homemade weapons to protect himself and his mother. His constant talk of monsters, combined with his increasingly disruptive behavior, isolates him further from other children at school. Teachers and administrators raise concerns about his mental health, and Amelia is repeatedly called in to address Samuel's behavior, adding to her stress. At home, Samuel's fears dominate their life. He refuses to sleep in his own bed, insisting on staying close to Amelia for protection. His anxieties cause sleepless nights for both of them, wearing down Amelia's patience. Samuel's vivid imagination, once brushed off as childhood fantasy, begins to take a darker turn, hinting at the psychological strain he's under, and unknowingly, foreshadowing the real threat they are about to face. One evening, after another sleepless night dealing with Samuel's fears, Amelia tries to settle him down by reading a bedtime story. Samuel brings her an unfamiliar pop-up book titled Mr. Babadook. As Amelia begins reading, the story takes a dark turn, introducing a sinister figure called the Babadook, who will torment anyone who becomes aware of him. The unsettling illustrations and creepy rhymes disturb both Amelia and Samuel. The book warns that, once you see what's underneath, you can never get rid of the Babadook. As the story unfolds, Samuel becomes increasingly terrified, convinced that the Babadook is real. He pleads with Amelia to protect him, but she dismisses the book as a strange, unsettling story. However, the sinister tone of the book leaves a lingering sense of dread in the house, marking the beginning of their descent into psychological horror. Despite Amelia's efforts to calm Samuel, the Babadook's presence starts to feel more real with each passing day. After the disturbing encounter with Mr. Babadook, strange things start happening in Amelia and Samuel's home. At night, Amelia hears strange noises, knocking on doors, scratching sounds, and whispers, but dismisses them as the result of her exhaustion. She begins to feel an ominous presence lurking in the house, but still tries to convince herself that Samuel's fears are just childhood nightmares. Meanwhile, Samuel's terror intensifies, and he becomes more convinced that the Babadook is real and haunting them. One night, Amelia attempts to get rid of the book by tearing it apart and throwing it away. However, the next day, the book mysteriously reappears on their doorstep, fully intact, but now with even more disturbing content. The new pages depict violent images of Amelia harming Samuel and herself, pushing her to the edge. The eerie occurrences leave Amelia unsettled, and it becomes clear that the threat of the Babadook is not just in Samuel's imagination, it has invaded their home and lives. Despite Amelia's attempts to maintain control, the Babadook's presence intensifies. Samuel becomes more agitated and begins acting out in fear, screaming that the Babadook is coming for them. Amelia, still trying to rationalize the situation, becomes increasingly isolated, and her own behavior starts to shift. She notices shadowy figures moving in the house and experiences sudden, terrifying visions of the Babadook lurking in the corners of her home. Sleep-deprived and overwhelmed, Amelia's mental state deteriorates, making her question her own sanity. Amelia tries once more to destroy the book, setting it on fire, but strange occurrences continue. Samuel's outbursts become uncontrollable, and the tension in the house escalates. Both mother and son are trapped in a constant state of fear. The Babadook's influence extends not only over Samuel but now directly into Amelia's mind, further blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. The creature's looming presence is felt everywhere, pushing Amelia closer to a complete breakdown. As the Babadook's presence grows stronger, Amelia's mental state begins to unravel. She becomes irritable, short-tempered, and increasingly detached from Samuel. Small frustrations set her off, and she begins to have violent thoughts, as shown in disturbing visions where she lashes out at Samuel. The Babadook's influence takes root, and Amelia starts losing her sense of self, behaving in erratic and unsettling ways. She begins seeing the Babadook more frequently, including a horrifying vision of it crawling toward her in the shadows, solidifying the creature's hold on her mind. Amelia isolates herself from the world, refusing help from concerned neighbors and friends. As the days pass, her lack of sleep and the constant paranoia push her closer to madness. Samuel notices the drastic change in his mother's behavior and grows more terrified of her than of the monster itself. The bond between mother and son deteriorates, leaving them vulnerable to the Babadook's control. Amelia's growing instability sets the stage for the terrifying confrontation that is to come. The Babadook's grip on Amelia tightens as she fully succumbs to its influence. In a terrifying sequence, Amelia is completely possessed by the Babadook. Her behavior becomes erratic and violent, and she loses control of herself. She lashes out at Samuel, threatening him with the very violence depicted in the pop-up book. Her loving, protective nature is overtaken by rage and anger, and Samuel is now in real danger from his own mother, who has become a vessel for the Babadook. In a chilling moment, Amelia kills their dog in a fit of rage, signaling that the Babadook has fully taken over. Samuel, terrified, tries to hide from her as she continues her descent into madness. The once distant and shadowy presence of the Babadook is now fully manifested in Amelia, turning her into the embodiment of everything Samuel feared. This marks the lowest point in their relationship, as Amelia becomes the very threat Samuel has been warning about all along. As Amelia becomes fully possessed by the Babadook, Samuel takes matters into his own hands. Despite his fear, Samuel uses the traps and weapons he's built to defend himself against his mother. In a tense and emotional confrontation, he manages to subdue her temporarily, tying her up in the basement. During this struggle, Samuel tearfully reminds Amelia of their bond, begging her to fight the Babadook's control and return to her true self. His bravery and resilience are key in weakening the hold the Babadook has over her. Amelia, still under the Babadook's influence, tries to break free, but Samuel's words begin to reach her. The emotional connection between mother and son becomes the turning point, as Samuel's love for Amelia and his defiance against the Babadook give her the strength to fight back. This critical moment marks the beginning of Amelia's battle to regain control of her mind and protect Samuel from the malevolent entity threatening them both. After Samuel's defiance and emotional plea, Amelia finally begins to fight back against the Babadook. In a climactic confrontation, Amelia faces the full manifestation of the creature. The Babadook tries to overpower her, using her grief and rage to push her deeper into despair. However, Amelia stands her ground, unleashing her suppressed anger and grief from the death of her husband. She confronts the trauma she has long avoided, screaming at the Babadook that it cannot have her son. The Babadook, weakened by Amelia's defiance, shrinks back, losing its grip on her. In a powerful display of emotional release, Amelia forces the Babadook into submission, but rather than destroying it, she banishes it to the basement. This final confrontation symbolizes her acknowledgement that while she cannot entirely rid herself of grief, she can control it. The Babadook is still present, but it no longer holds power over her or Samuel. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Amelia and Samuel's relationship begins to heal. The film's tone shifts as we see them working together to return to a sense of normalcy. However, the Babadook is not completely gone, it has been confined to the basement, a physical representation of Amelia's grief and trauma. Amelia now regularly goes down to the basement to feed the Babadook, acknowledging its presence but keeping it under control. This act symbolizes her acceptance that her grief will always be part of her life, but it no longer dominates her. Amelia's ability to manage the Babadook allows her to move forward with Samuel. She no longer denies her pain but faces it in a healthier way. Samuel, too, shows signs of recovery, having found security in his mother's renewed strength. The film ends on an unsettling but hopeful note, suggesting that while grief never fully disappears, it can be managed and lived with, rather than feared. The Babadook concludes with a powerful message about grief and its lasting impact. Amelia and Samuel have survived their terrifying ordeal, but the Babadook, Amelia's grief and trauma, still exists, now contained in the basement. Instead of trying to ignore or destroy it, Amelia learns to live with it, symbolizing that while grief never completely disappears, it can be managed and controlled. The film ends on a bittersweet note, offering hope that with time, emotional wounds can heal, even if the pain remains part of one's life. If you like our work, please like, share and subscribe our channel for more movie recaps.